Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Lightsaber Lounge, Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Scot McDonald. Welcome to our newest episode. It's going to be a fun one. Before I get any further, I'm just going to introduce my co-hosts for today. We have Jesus back with us.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Simon here today.
Hey, how you doing?
And we have Sudhir.
How's it going?
So, in this episode, what we're going to talk about, we're going to this is a very broad topic, but we're going to talk about Star Wars versus Star Trek. Can they coexist in our brains?
Well, I don't know. Considering how many times Star Trek has been said in this show, even though we were meaning Star Wars.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's practically a Star Trek podcast.
Yeah, practically.
Yes.
And we always making it like we have comparisons, right? Like we always
yes.
compare,
True.
to other
But
shows,
when you say we,
I
you
really
mean
mean
Scot.
yeah. I mean,
Okay. Yes, I'll take that one. Yes, I have been guilty of saying Star Trek on many occasions.
Yeah.
So, yes, because I secretly like Star Trek as well.
yeah.
see, there you go.
It doesn't have to be a secret.
No, it
That's-
doesn't.
That's
No,
fine.
no, that's true.
You can like a lot of stuff, so
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So don't judge me.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about just some of the differences, what makes Star Wars Star Wars, what makes Star Trek, where they possibly kind of meet, where they diverge. We were talking a little bit in our earlier episode. This is probably one of the biggest differences is how Star Trek is really rooted in kind of our world.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like human beings have evolved from Earth, and it's the Federation. But sort of the way ships are, the way science is, it's kind of more science-based, more reality-based.
Yeah.
Even they're taking things to the nth degree, but it's kind of theoretically based on real science.
in real science, yeah.
So we hold that to sort of a level of plausibility and believability to a different standard. Star Wars is kind of more in the fantasy realm. We have we have the Force, we have all these things that are sort of beyond believability, but we kind of accept that in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you guys grow up? Did you kind of have a love for both? Did you favor one over the other?
Growing up, I loved both. I mean, I watched anything that was science related, sci-fi oriented. Watched Star Trek on a regular basis. Used to watch the really old ones on repeats, and then once TNG came out, watched that. Star Wars, everything, just anything that was sci-fi oriented, I was like, ooh, let's check that out.
Yeah, me too. There wasn't a lot of sci-fi content.
No, nowhere near as what we have now. But
yeah.
Well, it's funny because I think Star Wars for me is the first thing that I can think of when it comes to like science and sci-fi and fantasy and whatnot. Then I started watching Star Trek, the Next Generation.
Next Generation.
Which I that show, I love that show.
Yeah.
So and it kind of got into the other ones, and then also at certain times during the day growing up, they would show the
original.
black and white original one.
Right, yeah.
They would show Lost in Space.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Lost.
The
in Space,
original one. There was a couple of the shows that were more fantasy, but all kind of like the same era. And so at one point I was watching everything.
Yeah,
right? And
right.
I do love anything that has to do with like science fiction and fantasy and stuff like that. So mind you, I think Star Wars for me was always a bit higher. Like it's always been like, but I love Star Trek too. It's like I don't know as much
right?
Star Trek trivia as I would know Star Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely it's there. It's yeah.
Simon?
Yeah, I liked both. I think the Star Wars movies, were bigger for me when I was younger. I think also I really wonder if the names weren't so close together. Would this
That is true.
would this discussions even really be happening?
Right.
Like there was a lot of there was still more science fiction stuff out there.
Yeah.
And has come, but it's this argument just because people, do the wrong name.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, there was
and that's how you compare them.
Yeah, like Battlestar Galactica was the original
yeah.
one was at the same. Like I never really watched the original one, but it was at the. I think it's the same era, like when Star
it
Wars
was like
came
during
out,
the 70s, yeah.
and the original Star Trek and whatnot. So
No one's fighting huge fights over that.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no,
yeah,
exactly.
no. So
It was like post New Hope. So I think it probably would have been the early 80s.
It was
so
like
they just like get
78,
some,
79,
or was it that early? I mean, get some content on TV as soon as
Yeah,
possible that
it
looks
was-
like Star Wars.
Yeah, because it was just like, we
yeah,
need Star
yeah,
Wars type
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Just get it on there.
yeah, for sure.
And it really didn't make a lot of sense.
There's a couple of the shows that were very similar to Star Wars. I'm trying to remember what they were, but I can't seem to think about it. But now that you mentioned that, like,
Yeah.
everybody was trying to do the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
I mean, the overall tone is obviously much different because Star Wars was sort of more. It had a darker tone, like the sort of the fate of the universe. There was the evil empire, and there's a lot of kind of. Whereas Star Trek always tried to, and this was Gene Roddenberry's kind of thing. He wanted to depict a more optimistic future.
It was a very positive sort
very
of look.
positive, and the Federation was very positive. And they're sort of like a version of the Jedi. But they weren't conflicted. There was no bad Federation people. They're always trying to do what was just and right. So it had a much different vibe.
Feel.
Also, there was always like a positive message at the end of the most of the episodes, right? So
And they did a lot, especially in the original series too. Well, across the board, they did a lot of sort of social commentary storylines. So addressing issues of discrimination. Like there was that one in the original series where can't remember the actor's name, but he was in the Batman series. He played the Joker in the original Batman.
Oh yeah. In the 60s, I know him. Yeah,
Frank Gorshin or something like. Anyways, they have these sort of alien. This guy seeking asylum on the Enterprise, and his sort of makeup is one half is black, one half is white, and the sort of police officer tracks him down and wants to apprehend him and take him back to the home planet for punishment because he was
a mix.
He was an outsider, and they couldn't figure out what the difference was. And like, guys, look at him. No, he's black on the right side and white. It's the wrong side.
The opposite.
Yeah, you didn't even realize it.
Yeah, you couldn't even tell the difference. Yeah.
So there's interesting episodes like that.
Is
I think that's kind of like the really interesting thing about like really good sci-fi is that it's set in a science fiction future sort of thing, but really it's a conversation about our reality, and what it's all about. Even if you get into some of the TNG episodes, they didn't really feel very science fiction-y. They were just kind of like just placeholders for our reality.
Right. Yeah.
But like really good ones, like that one was a really good take on like that was definitely a science fiction look at like our reality, right? And so, and that's kind of what Star Trek was all about. It was like kind of like looking at ourselves, but from a very science fiction point of view, right? Some of them were just really good stories, and the ones that didn't have a lot of action and fighting in it were probably some of my most favorites.
Because they probably had more deeper stories.
Because it was a story, there was more development. Like City on the Edge of Forever is definitely one of my favorite of the original series, where they go back into time and all that. So it's very cool, very well done.
Like that one on the TNG where Picard is, they encounter this probe and he basically passes out on the ship. But in his experience, he's transported to this planet and then he's stranded and he lives out his entire rest of his lifetime on this planet and has a wife and children.
That's crazy.
And, he lives like 80 years on this planet.
And
then he wakes up and it's like been 30 seconds.
That is crazy. I can't remember. I don't know if I watched that episode.
So this probe, the idea is the probe was this planet, its sun went supernova or something like this. So they're all going to die and they had no way to get off the planet. They didn't have hyper speed or travel, hyperspace travel. So they sent out this probe to have him live a life so that he would know what they're all about.
So any people that it would encounter, it would automatically just make them live their whole life in a span of like 30 seconds.
Super interesting.
It was such a good. There's so many episodes like that where you really have to sit there and look at them and take like sort of pause about you and your life and just your reality and just different ways of looking at it.
Right.
For sure.
Whereas Star Wars, we don't get as much of that sort of reflection on my own culture or reality or beliefs in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars is always, unfortunately, it's always based on like the history of this few people that were the original people in this world.
Sure.
And then everything kind of based out of that. Yeah, there's other things that are happening, but we always end up going to the same point.
Right.
It's like a fabric of its own story, right? Like it has its own story, and everything that we watch for Star Wars is just a point in that story.
Right.
And it's just an expansion of that story. Whereas when you look at things like Star Trek and stuff like that, some of the episodes really don't jive with other episodes, but because of the fact that it's a reflection of yourself, they have meaning and they have impact and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So like you get these insightful ways of looking at your world and your own self, right?
Yeah.
So
Even like when Picard, after he came back from being a Borg or being with the Borg, he's always like every episode or like pretty often, he's always dealing with the consequences of what he did.
right, yeah,
And always kind of like, it's basically dealing with PTSD.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Right,
yeah,
which is a real thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
There was also one episode I remember when it was in the first couple of seasons. It was actually a really good episode where this one peaceful society, they're very happy, they're very peaceful, and they had gone through this huge civil war era, but they were able to overcome that and go beyond. But what they did was they had trained all their soldiers, like they brainwashed them and like made them into super soldiers. And then because when they tried to integrate them back into society, they couldn't be integrated. So they just kind of threw them away into another planet and put them into prison, essentially. Is what it is.
crazy.
And it was just like, and then Federation's looking at them to become a part of the Federation. And then they realize this. And it's like, no, you can't do that. And these guys are dealing with like lots of problems. They talk about their problems and how they're dealing with it. And when you look at it, it's like, yeah, these are people, it's like how you treat veterans, right? Like, how are you looking at them?
You
How
just basically discard them.
yeah,
and
we're
then
just like, we'll just
that's
forget
your
about
problem.
them.
Yeah.
We needed them at that point,
Yeah.
but now we don't need them to be
Yeah.
violent. So it's okay.
Right.
That's crazy.
And
yeah.
it's like all these little different conversations that you have around that. And it's like, you know, that was really, it's always really interesting to look at these stories, right?
Well, I think maybe that's where Star Wars runs into a bit of a problem because we talked a lot in the last episode about kind of the struggle with what Disney's trying to do with Star Wars and trying to figure out how to release content. Because Star Wars is this, it's like a linear saga narrative. Everything's connected. And it's this big arching storyline where everything has to fit into this
into the
overarching
bigger
storyline.
story. Yeah.
And we jump around in time, but it's all connected.
It's all the same. Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek always was, it's about a ship, its captain and its crew. And they just went places and they had different singular adventures and stories.
Oh, and you have unlimited stories that you can tell. You know what I mean?
And
So,
they don't have to connect to
no,
everything.
no,
all the time.
zero.
And the universe was a big place, so they just sent them different places.
Yeah. Which I think it creates more interesting because you can, to your point, Sudhir, you can write an interesting script narrative that's self-contained, one episode. We could explore a theme.
Yeah.
Whereas in Star Wars now everything has to explain something that's come before or after it. We're all
how
looking
it
for
fits
answers.
into
How
What
it
I think,
fits.
I mean, I think that's a problem that it doesn't have to be there, but they make it. I don't know why they box
sometimes they
themselves
just put it
into
in
it,
there.
because you can make something like. I'm gonna go back to Andor,
Right.
even though Andor is connected to a bigger thing because it's the beginning of the rebellion.
Yeah.
But you can still write something that is Star Wars, but then it's their own stories.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand why they have to be this bigger theme when it's the little parts are almost what we want to see now, and they're more important, and they don't really have to connect right away.
No.
It doesn't need to connect from the episode 1. I don't need give me 7 seasons and eventually connect it if you want to. But as long as the characters are interesting and the stories are good, I don't care.
This is why I think The Mandalorian was trying to go and turn itself into basically
Its own
a
thing,
weekly cop show.
Yes.
We did the story. You have all the knowledge. Now he's going to be a cop, and you're going to see episodes every week of him
dispensing justice.
justice, and it's going to be a crime show.
But then we got Luke at some point coming back. You know what I mean? So it's like,
So there's still we're still part of the story, but we're a weekly cop show. I don't know if that's still happening, but that was a plan to turn it into something that didn't just blow up.
Well, it makes you're right. That maybe that's why The Mandalorian had this appeal. It's like I just want to see what he's getting up to this week.
And that's the thing is that there was no cameos or not fan service up to the very end of season 1, right? When Luke show up, and then now we know there's a bigger connection with the universe, right?
Yeah. I think, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a weekly Star Wars show where it was just that. It was just this group of, I don't know, mercenaries who go to different planets and they have to solve problems, or they go into the A-Team for Star Wars.
They were going to do that with the that show with the Vancouver guy.
Rebels? No, not Rebels.
No.
Rogue Squadron.
Rogue Squad.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And that kind of looks like that. Yeah, you can see the bigger connection to the universe
Sure.
because they're part of the rebellion or whatever the government was at that time, the Republic.
Yeah, the Republic.
But you were just gonna see their stories and what they deal with, but it unfortunately didn't happen. We didn't get to see it, and we probably won't get to see it.
No,
so, yeah.
no. I don't know. I don't know what Disney wants out of Star Wars at this point. Obviously, they want money.
Yes.
But like, I don't know what they really want out of it, like long term, in terms of from a creative outlet.
Yeah.
Like
Money.
just money. Okay, you're right.
Yeah. It's money.
I just don't know if they know how to turn what they have into money yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. They know how to spend the money.
Yeah.
How to spend the money.
They know how to waste the money.
Well, even the newer shows from Star Trek, right? Like New Frontier and
Discovery.
you know, like they were very good on their own shows, and they do have they are connected to the bigger Star Trek universe, and they do. I mean, like in Discovery, you see Kirk,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel forced.
No.
It just feels like, oh, Kirk is there, but then there's a new story, new things that you haven't seen before, and you know eventually you'll get to that point, but it's not like the only thing that's happening.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They did a good job of doing that.
Yeah, or even
incorporating
Spock,
him.
like the new Spock, like Spock on this, not Discovery, Frontier. He's a great fucking character, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so anyway.
And I'm wondering if this is one of the issues with Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Because for Star Trek, they have Paramount Plus, right?
Yeah.
But the big thing they did is Paramount Plus is in the US. They sold the new shows to the international market and paid for the whole show.
Oh,
The show doesn't cost them a dime to show in the US.
So everybody else is paying.
So they're like, okay, we've made money. You do whatever you want. Here's the money. And we don't care anymore.
Yeah, we don't care.
If it goes well,
great.
We already made money.
we
Yeah.
every dollar that people sign up for Paramount Plus is great.
Yeah.
But we've paid for the show already.
Yeah.
Whereas Disney is like, this has got to bring in more subscribers.
More subscribers, Which, I mean, like, fuck. It's like, what about the ones that you have right now? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
So, it's interesting.
Well, the one thing about Star Trek I always appreciated, which I guess made it work for me as a fan, was it was really about the relationships of the characters. So it was the crew,
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
The strong captain, and, say if it was Next Generation, and you had Picard, and then, Number One, and Geordi, and Worf, and you really, like, you just followed them on their journey, and you cared about them.
Yeah.
You cared about how, they interact with each other and stuff. You obviously knew there wasn't a high sense of jeopardy because you knew none of them were going to die.
Yeah.
But whereas in Star Wars, you're more following each character has their individual journeys more so. They're not really they're not really in it together as much.
They're not really interconnected with like the other members of.
It might be that's why the original 3 work so much better is because we had that it was Han and Leia and Luke and Chewie and R2 and 3. That was our crew.
Yeah.
And we followed them through all these adventures. And then we lost them, and then it was kind of just an avalanche of new characters.
Yeah. I think that's kind of our issue that we're going through now, essentially, is because there's no one really to follow at this point.
I mean, like in Clone Wars, you had Anakin, you had Ahsoka, and you had Obi-Wan, right? And plus all the clones, and they started to become kind of like that, like the group and the people that you met, like Bad Batch. It's 5 people. You care about them,
right?
And they're important to you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the part, especially Acolyte right now. We're just getting to know these people.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like there's no real connection there. Andor, you knew some of the people from Rogue One.
Yes.
You already established that relationship, right? So I mean, Ahsoka, up to a certain point, if you watch the show, yes. If you didn't watch the show, then obviously you're not going to have any connections to anybody, right?
True.
So
Yeah.
So but I think that's a very important point, the connection with the
if you had watched the Clone Wars,
if you had watched or Rebels,
in Rebels, then you will be way more connected. So
I think the thing is like even when before Disney took over Star Wars, if you said Star Wars to me, it was Han, Luke, Leia, R2,
Chewbacca,
C-3PO, the main guys.
Darth Vader,
Yeah. Now when you say Star Wars to me, I don't know who I'm thinking of anymore. Like I'm just like it's like so many people. I have no idea what I'm thinking about anymore. I don't really know.
It's
So
like, what kind of Star Wars are you? Well, that's what I mean. Like people hate this term, but it's like it's Disney Star Wars and Star Wars.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like which one? Yeah,
Which one are we talking about?
Are we
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah,
But even Disney Star Wars, I couldn't tell you. Like there's people that people that like Mandalorian and stuff, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's the only
Right.
thing they
that's
know.
the only thing they
Yeah,
know.
that's true.
Yeah. They don't know anything else. Yeah, no, I totally and that's my daughter is like that. So unfortunately, So
Well, I mean, the thing is, so with Star Trek, I mean, I guess for me, like I can sort of picture the different shows and stuff like that. You got to see the growth of these characters over long periods, like 7 years and all this other
It's a
stuff,
long
and all
time,
these episodes. But a lot of the times, it was just these little episodes that kind of really made it really interesting. It was like the episodes that weren't connected to some mythology or some lore or something like that. That were the ones that were the most impactful, right? And so I've always appreciated those things. I think having a lot of those kind of made me appreciate the show a little bit more because it was just so much more to it than just what are we doing to expand the overarching story, further and further, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of why I like Mandalorian in the beginning because it really wasn't about like this whole big huge overarching story. There wasn't much of one.
Yeah, that's the thing with season 2 or 3. Like once it started to bring all the other Mandalorians, and it just became something way bigger than not a lot of people are into it or a lot of people are connected to if you haven't watched any of the other shows. Right. So
That was, I think, with Star Trek, any episode you could watch without having to feel like, I needed to watch 5 other seasons to even understand what this episode.
Yeah, that was
about.
a big mistake. I think they should have done like at least like another recap.
Right.
Build that first kind of build the story a little bit. Don't make people go and watch something that they probably not going to into.
But you got to remember, it's Disney. Their whole thing with Marvel is like, well, you've watched everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't, and that's been their thing that makes money.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh yeah, we can just do this with everything else we have, right?
I mean, but that was the thing, with Marvel and all the Marvel movies. It was people didn't have to do that. They just did that because
they wanted to,
and it made the connection of these movies that much more interesting. A majority of the movies, they didn't have to you didn't really have to have seen too much of them prior to that. The only real one that you really had to worry about was the Avengers Endgame and Infinity Stones.
Because it was all connected.
Because they walked into that one and it was like, look, everyone's already done all their homework. We all know what's going on. Let's just jump into the story. And that's where you had that payoff of all of that. But now since that end game, it's just been like, oh, well, you have to watch this and you have to watch that. And I'm like, I don't
it's a lot of
now.
well, that's the thing. It's like there's too many things out there, so people are not going to waste their time watching things. So to switch subjects a little bit, Star Trek was one of the first shows when they started to dealing with Datta or Data. Because he was a droid, but he was being treated like a human,
right?
So it's kind of like, and some people I know there were some episodes where that was an issue, and it was always kind of like, he's not
an ascension being,
right? So those were pretty interesting,
very interesting,
right? So it's kind of like he's a great character, right? So it's like,
I would argue that quite often the writing on a Star Trek, say Next Generation episode was better than most Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I think so.
They'd have, and then, Patrick Stewart could,
can actually
deliver the lines. He was, but it got better. Like when you watch season 1 of, TNG, you're like, it's a little rough. When you watch the last few seasons, you're like, wow, this was pretty good.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It was the same thing. I haven't seen the entire Picard, but the beginning of Picard was very shaky, and then eventually apparently it just became like this thing that you have to watch.
That was the thing is I watched half of the first season of Picard.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And I just I can't do.
It was like dreary Picard.
I don't mind that. I just felt like there was certain things I like. This is the best sauce. This is the best sauce. Because I mean, he's older.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he can be like happy doing all these different things. I think I watched until he died and then came back in a different body or something like that.
I didn't even get that far.
There was a thing. So anyway, but it apparently
If you watch
if you get
really
into
good,
it,
the last season, they basically bring the entire original cast back.
Yeah, man,
This
that's
is
so
pretty
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
See, so
I'm
gotta
gonna
watch
pick
now.
it up again.
Just start at season 2.
There you go.
Yes,
Just-
that's right.
Yeah, just
skip
started
the
season
whole
two.
Oh, escape first
Okay.
season. Yeah.
There's a little catch up. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just go.
okay. Does this catch up? Okay,
Got
good.
it.
Then I'll do
I'm
that.
probably gonna do that.
You don't even need
to watch it.
Yeah.
Mind you, I think I watched a lot of the episodes, so it's kind of like I probably have maybe like 3 or 4 left. So.
No, I still have so many. So I was like,
No, just start season 2.
yeah.
Okay.
The thing was, is like, another thing that I had with that episode is like, it was kind of like all very, Federation isn't as cool as it used to be. I'm like, dude, the whole point is the Federation is awesome. It's cool. We're very happy. Let's just move on.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes when we try to go back to like a lot of the nostalgia and stuff, we try to like kind of throw a wrench into that nostalgia and like, oh, we're edgy now. Like, no, just stick to whatever you've got set up. Let's just go with that and just like, we're good.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I think I agree with you with the thing about Star Wars and Star Trek. The writing on Star Trek was always on a per episode basis was always a little bit stronger. Like there was a little bit more meat to it, and there's a little bit more happening.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot that of the dynamic of Star Trek that I miss. I would like a little bit of in Star Wars. We talked a little bit earlier too about the sort of the plausibility of the science part of it, and how Star Trek is more rooted in
Actual
plausibility.
science.
They stretch it to the nth degree, but in some ways, I
yeah.
find that for me, I feel like as a fan, when I was younger, particularly, it felt like not too far in the future. Like I wanted to be on that ship.
Oh, dude, like for
Yeah.
me, like the craziest thing from Star Trek is like with that machine that you get your food from.
Oh, the replicator.
Oh, the replicator.
Oh,
yeah.
dude, that's so cool. And then you can get anything. It's like,
Yeah,
I want this, I want this. It's like basically a 3D printer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Right?
food. Yeah,
for food
exactly.
and other objects. So that,
But it was rooted in some kind of
reality. Yeah.
saying, okay, it reorganizes matter.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is everything's just atoms.
Yes.
So okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
that you could
Yeah.
do that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So on that machine, because I haven't actually read how he actually works, does he have to take matter from something else to make the new matter? Is it like does somehow runs out of matter, and then he can't give you your pizza anymore?
I don't know.
The basic, which isn't real. I mean, again, when it comes back to science, it's not really real. In Star Trek lore, there's the ability of turning energy into matter and matter into energy.
Yes.
You're right.
So that's kind of what it is.
Oh, so you get the more energy you give.
Yeah.
As long as you're giving the energy.
As long as there's energy, it can turn that energy into matter.
Got it.
And sort of recreate the molecules to be what you need. So
Got
you can actually program the replicator to make something that you want instead of actually having to give it to it.
Yeah.
And you can just program it. And then, because I think at one point Picard is very happy about his Earl Grey tea that he's programmed into the replicator
Yes.
or some junk like that. Right?
Yeah.
And so, so that's kind of how that works.
So-
From my understanding.
So another question: when you instead of composting things, do you make them into energy then, so that they go back and for you to do
I guess
matter?
it's vaporized into.
Yeah, it's converted into energy, and then it can recreate that
I don't think they have a
energy.
big compost bin on the Enterprise.
How do you know?
Well, maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, where does all the poop go?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I would think that would just get turned into energy.
Probably. Yeah. But this is what I like about Star Trek is that they took the replicators and so forth. So then they explained how the invention of the replicators basically erased money,
Yeah.
capitalism, because no one needed to buy anything anymore.
Yeah, because you can actually make
You just
them
have a
yourself.
replicator and
Yeah,
make whatever
then
you
make
want.
it,
So
yeah.
life, as we know it, society completely changed, which is a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And that people don't work for money anymore.
Yeah.
You just exist and better yourself and learn and become a better person is the kind of
You learn through your experience and grow.
It was
what you
it was the whole-
achieve.
it was the whole reason that it was explaining how we went from fighting everybody to just being everybody was friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, giant invention
Yeah,
changed.
there was
Yeah.
nothing to
Yeah.
fight for. We all had everything we wanted.
Yeah, everyone could have whatever they wanted, and everything was looked after. Everyone on Earth was happy, and that's kind of look at it and go, yeah, that'd be awesome.
That's
Like,
kind of what
I
we
know.
need right now.
know.
Yeah.
I like that optimistic view of the future that we've solved. It's not all apocalyptic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Because totally.
And the other thing was that
refreshing.
you weren't trying to solve a fight between humans. You were trying to just learn about other things, or they get put into other situations. The fact that they were all okay wasn't a problem in the story, right?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that
Right.
wasn't like the issue, right?
Yeah.
And that was always kind of the nice thing about it.
So, how did you feel about the villains? So, Star Trek they didn't have the Sith or the dark side, but they had the Borg,
And
The Klingons,
the Klingons,
the
yes.
Romulans,
the
The
Romulans,
Romulans, yeah.
And various other species. But I always thought their villains were quite strong. You know, the Klingons were great.
Yeah.
But it was a whole group of other people, not just like one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It wasn't just one. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And they were enemies or like antagonists for different reasons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So it's
yes.
like, which it kind of make more sense. Like, especially the Klingon, they're just like, that's their culture and they just
Right.
want to,
This war.
Yeah,
a war.
war.
That's what,
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the Romulans are a bit smarter and
Well, again, going back to Gene Roddenberry and how that all came about, like obviously Romulans were like a view of Russia, right?
Yeah.
Like we're very closed off.
Yeah.
You didn't know anything about them. There was a bit of a espionage
Yeah,
war going
war
on with
going
them,
on, yeah,
right?
for
But
sure.
the general public knew very little about them, right?
Yeah.
So it was a look at our world from a different viewpoint,
So
right?
the Cold War kind
Yeah.
of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you get like all these different ideas and so when you look at it that way, you get to see, again, there's another layer of it, of like how we're looking at our world through this other sort of society and how it sort of functions and deals with everything and stuff. So
yeah.
I really like the way. So Star Trek eventually ended up in a situation with, on the heels of Picard, where they brought back the original cast, but they've run out of gas now that we're done with the Next Generation cast.
Right.
So they're having to, a new ship, Discovery, new crew. But I have to say, I really like Strange New Worlds with Captain Pike and his crew, particularly 2 episodes. One where they did the crossover with the animated.
Yeah, I haven't
Below
seen it
Decks,
yet, but yeah, I love Below
crossed
Decks,
over
yeah.
into the
the
live action.
yeah, really?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
fantastic.
apparently it was
Oh,
really
wow.
good. Yeah.
And then
So,
they
yeah.
had the musical
I've
episode,
heard
I
that's
heard-
supposed
I heard
to
it's
be
really good,
amazing.
too.
which
yeah.
is the best. It sounds. I can't imagine someone pitching this in the room.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna do
and
Star
Star
Trek,
Wars
yeah.
would never do this
Oh,
in a
God,
million years.
yeah.
It's like we're gonna do an episode where it's just gonna be entire thing's a musical. When I read this, I thought, no, this is a joke. But
yeah.
Yeah.
and it was real. And the ship gets caught in this sort of weird vortexy thingy where they can't communicate with it. They can't send out signals. So the only thing they can figure out is try, well, we'll send music out because it's got this harmonics that might respond to
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
So they send me. So somehow they get trapped into involuntary singing. Every time they try and talk, they start singing and they don't know why. Oh. And they have these big production numbers.
Good.
And then the Klingon ship gets caught in the same thing. Oh, God. And they cut to them on the viewer and they're dancing like a boy band.
Yeah. Oh God, that's hilarious. Yeah.
And they're like dancing Klingons. Now we've seen everything. It was so funny.
Okay, I'll
but I
watch
was
it,
like,
yeah.
you know what? They took a big risk and it totally paid
And he
off.
paid off.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is where I find Disney is floundering. They keep trying to let's bring in another director with a whole new vision.
Yes,
and it's going to be
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
and it just
yeah.
doesn't seem to ever work.
No, let's bring all these new characters to represent everybody, but then there's no real connection to
No,
any of the
anything,
characters because
yeah.
you don't know anything about them.
Yeah,
But I think Disney has some reason to be concerned.
Yeah.
'Cause Star Wars did do a musical, and it's called the Christmas episode.
well, yeah,
there's
You know what's funny? I was gonna
Yes,
say that
true.
too,
Yeah.
but I never seen it.
it wasn't.
yeah.
wasn't
You didn't
that-
watch it?
Yeah, I know.
I watched it.
I know.
Oh, did you?
I
Yeah.
There
Because
was
he made me
musical
watch it.
moments in it.
Yeah, no, I've never seen
that's
I
it.
true.
think it's good enough that episode says that Star Wars should stay far away.
Far away
Far away from
yeah,
music.
from musicals. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, we did do an entire episode on the Star Wars
Yeah.
Christmas
Yeah,
special.
I was not
feel free to
there. I'm
listen
so
to that.
glad.
You weren't there,
Yeah,
no.
I'm glad I wasn't there.
I had to
So, yeah.
watch the whole thing. Thanks to you.
Sudhir still hates me.
I still am
it.
very upset about that.
He's like, he's trying to stick needles in
Just
his
put
eyes.
just
Yeah.
like bleach on your eyes.
Oh
It's like,
God!
I
If only I
can't.
could. But
Yeah.
I think the thing with Star Trek is I don't think there is that much of pressure on them. Like it's not.
Yeah.
When you look at Star Wars, Star Wars is such a
for
huge
sure,
property.
For sure.
And I'm not saying that Star Trek isn't a big deal or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I think from Paramount's point of view, they're just kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
When they were doing the movies, it was a much bigger deal, and it was
Yeah.
like, oh, we've got to like
Yeah.
really pay attention to this.
Yeah.
But when they're doing their TV shows, I don't think they're allowed to give. They've been given so much freedom.
Yeah, they have. True.
Yeah.
To do what they think would work. And okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's
Yeah.
fine. And they're able to do that.
Yeah.
I think because the stories like Star Wars are so interconnected, we are so watching out for every little detail and nuance and
Yeah.
critical of everything we think is not serving the story correctly.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek, we're kind of like, oh, it's got this ship and a few cool characters. Okay, good. Let's
let's
go.
just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do cool stuff.
And also, like, the fan base has never been as vocal about their problems
right.
or the issues
Yeah.
and stuff like that than
Yeah.
the people in Star Wars. So
Yeah, it's not as
unfortunate.
It's
yeah.
a little not as toxic as
Yeah,
some
toxic,
Star Wars.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
But it's
yeah.
also the
So,
reason, like I see it more being realistic, like the ships having families and so much staff. The whole reason they're able to do like the animated Lower Decks series
Yes.
is because there's this whole other group
of people that you never hear
you never
of.
hear
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's like you
True.
see them run by in the background. You're like, oh, that
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
who
it's
is
so
that?
good. I love that show. That
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
is so good.
Yeah.
Hello, Ducks, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think the like say in terms of iconic characters? So on the Star Trek side, we have Kirk, Picard,
yeah.
Worf, Geordi. We have Pike,
Data.
Data. Star Wars side, of course, we've got our Luke, Leia, Chewie.
Yeah.
Like, do they compare, or do you have more of an affinity to one set of characters or the other?
I think in a different way I do because it's like I see Star Wars and Star Trek in a different with a different lens.
Right.
So to me, to be honest, like they don't cross over.
Right. They're not competing.
No, they're not competing against each
Right,
other.
right.
It's
Yeah.
like one thing is one thing, and then
Yeah.
Star Wars is one thing, and Star Trek is their own thing, and they're trying to
Yeah.
tell different stories. I feel stronger towards Star Wars just
Sure.
because I think that was the first thing that my brain can remember from when I was a kid. I don't even remember how my mom looks like, but I do remember Darth Vader.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. Star Trek came a bit later on, but they're two different things that can live in the same world.
Yeah, I don't know
Right,
if I
so-
have much of an affinity towards one or the other. I think because growing up, there was so much more Star Trek content for me, so I watched that a lot more
Yeah.
feverishly. It's only been in the last 20 years that you're getting a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I mean, obviously, for a lot of people, 20 years is a very
It's
big
a
deal.
long time,
For me,
yeah,
not
yeah.
that much at this
yeah.
point. But yeah, so like I mean, there was a huge time and period where Star Trek was a big deal. Now Star Wars is far more a big deal in my life, and so yeah, I think it just goes through phases with me.
Yeah, one thing I find, like, say, what's always consistent in Star Trek is the ship.
Yeah,
And the Enterprise is
yeah.
a big character.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And we had that with the Falcon. But it seems like in the new content, we just don't have that,
No.
which is one thing I find missing.
Yeah.
We have a bit in, it was cool, the Mandalorian with the Razor Crest.
But then he
Sure.
got rid of it.
And then he got rid of it, which I disappointing.
Yeah.
So and then even
Boba Fett.
we can't even call it Slave One anymore.
Yeah.
They've renamed it because it's not a.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
why?
Oh, is it?
You can't say
Yeah,
Slave
yeah,
One anymore.
Yeah.
It's like master bedrooms are now called primary
Yeah,
bedrooms.
primary, yeah. Or
Similar,
landlords and
yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, landlords. Yeah. So I think it's like I miss that, and that's one thing I always like about they always have like a new Enterprise, so it's still like the character kind of lives on. And I find when I'm watching Star Wars, I'm always every show I needed to answer a bunch of questions I have.
Okay.
So I'm always looking for answers to questions, and if it doesn't answer the questions, I'm like getting frustrated.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek, there's
You
it's
don't-
just
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just enjoying the
yeah.
episode.
It is what it is.
In its
Yeah.
its
Yeah, I
own
can see
right.
that,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, the environment of Star Trek is always the ship, so that it kind of takes on its own character.
Yeah.
for sure.
Whereas in the movies or in the TV shows for Star Wars, the environment is not part of the equation.
Right.
Right? Like the
Yeah.
environment is, we're going to a new planet. And so they go to a new planet and they do their stuff there. Then they go back to the other planet and then they go to this planet. And that's kind of what Star Wars is, right? So
Yeah.
you don't really get that sense of them being encapsulated into something
Right.
that's
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah.
They're already transient, right? Whereas
Sure.
Star Trek, they are transient, but
Yeah.
it's the ship that's transient. They're all a part of that ship,
Oh, that
right?
ship. Yeah.
So you do get like, I think it helps you when you're writing the story because then you can you can write within that environment. You know the
Yeah.
environment and it kind of makes life a little bit easier. And there's just some episodic things that happen outside of that environment on planets or whatever. But with Star Wars, you have to redo everything all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
It's like
true.
I feel like you're always reinventing things over and
Yeah,
over
it's
again,
true.
Yeah.
which is why we keep going back to Tatooine. I think.
Yeah,
you know?
it's true.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, look, Tatooine is not that important to the whole galaxy.
I know.
You know,
Totally. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I guess maybe that's why is because they don't have that sort of
Right.
environment that they can just call their own.
And that might be why Picard season 1 didn't work, right? Because he wasn't on the ship. He was just kind of in his home. and
Somewhere else,
Kind of
yeah,
traveling
yeah,
around.
yeah.
He's here and there
Yeah,
and meeting with people in different rooms. And it was like, this doesn't feel like Star Trek.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like I really like especially when he was in the winery. Like at,
Right,
at
yeah.
the very beginning,
Yeah.
because it felt like, oh, okay, I'm
Yeah.
so used to this guy being in space.
Yeah.
Now he's actually on a planet being a normal person.
Yeah.
That kind of like, I can watch this. It's just once they started to do certain things, I'm not like,
Yeah,
this is a bit-
once he started to leave that, it was like, oh,
this is a bit
okay.
sus. But
Yeah.
Right.
I know it will get better, so I will
Right.
continue watching.
Right.
So yeah, so
You know, in Star Wars had the Force. So that's probably the one biggest difference when you don't have that magical belief in. And I like Star Trek was very agnostic. Like it's almost like there really was no religion per se or magical beliefs. Everything was kind of rooted in
yeah,
science.
yeah.
There was obviously planets and
yeah,
things
the
like
different
that
planets.
were different.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you could, one big overarching philosophy was kind of like the Federation's prime directive. You know, like
Yeah.
this was a big,
Yeah.
very important thing. It was almost like it's not the Force, but at least it had some sort of guiding, sort of the
Principles.
Jedi
Yeah,
principles,
yeah, yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
you know,
principles,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So it had that similarity.
Yeah.
I like the idea of just traveling around with a group of people that I know really well on a ship, and because I wanted to be on that ship.
yeah.
That's what I liked as a kid.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I think obviously we can like both for different
Oh, yes,
reasons.
100%.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, I just finished watching Star Trek Discovery, the latest season. It was fine.
Was it? Okay, yeah.
I mean, they spent it visually, it's stunning.
Yeah.
That's what
Like,
I've heard,
they
yeah.
have spent a lot. The effects are really quite well done.
Yeah.
Story is a bit, it's okay.
Got it.
Because I think they had an overarching, the entire season was one storyline.
Yes.
They're trying to, find this secret thing, and each episode they're finding another clue. And after a while, I was like, I don't care about the storyline anymore.
Yeah.
Like this
Oh,
is 5 episodes in, and you still haven't found the thing.
Yeah.
I'd rather just have individual adventures.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Again, I think that's kind of what you expect from Star Trek.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
you'd expect that from Star Wars.
Yeah.
And when you walk into a Star Wars series, and that's kind of what you're expecting.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to go through this whole long story. Let's
Yeah.
get through it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Star Trek, it's like if you had like a couple of episodes that kind of worked together, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it was just like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
I know.
why is this going
Yeah,
on
it's
so
too
long?
long.
That's
Yeah,
what I need to
yeah,
stop
yeah,
now.
I felt like this. Like, what are you doing? This is not Star Trek.
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
do this in Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Interesting.
It's not what I signed up for.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. All
It
right.
says Star Trek on the front, not Star Wars.
Star
Please, let's
Wars.
get
Yeah.
to it.
There's no force
Yeah.
Star stuff.
stuff. Things.
Things.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, you know what? If you're listening out there, feel free to watch whatever you want to watch. I would definitely check it out if you haven't watched it. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. I think it's a great show. I really like Captain Pike, the character, the actor
great
that plays
character,
him.
yeah.
and like the way they depicted the ship and the technology and stuff is really quite.
Yeah.
It seems a bit over the top, like his. If you've watched it that much, you've watched it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so most
Captain
of it.
Pike's kind of like office quarters. It's
Yes.
gigantic.
I know. It's
got a
like-
full
yeah.
kitchen.
It's
and
like a penthouse.
It's like a penthouse apartment.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I know. It's like okay.
the fireplace, like the bar.
Yeah.
Like it's
They have a lot of amenities.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really went to
remember,
the 60 vibe.
I know. I'm not going to spoil it. Never mind.
No,
I'm not going to
no,
spoil it.
no.
Yeah.
No, spoil it. What are you gonna say?
Oh, I was just going to say he has to live like that since he knows he's going to
his
some
demise.
demise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Forgot about that. Well, that was established in the original series, his demise.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, so they got to.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing they have
Yeah.
to fit in.
To
It's
get
like,
in.
we know
They
he-
have to
he-
kind of come to that point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Where
at
he
some
gets
point.
So
to
there's
that,
an
right?
end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there
Right,
is an
so
end.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for being with me once again. Thanks, Jesus.
Sounds good. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Simon.
Thank you.
And thanks, Sudhir.
Thank you.
Look forward to having you guys back on the next episode. And thank you for joining us on this one. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. And I'm not sure what our next topic is, but that will be determined. We're going to regroup and record a bunch of new episodes. I'm sure we will be coming back with a lot more fun stuff. Perhaps more Acolytes.
yeah.
After we've seen more episodes, we can.
An end or two whenever it comes
An
out.
end or two, if and when that comes out. Yes. No, it will come out. Just when. Yeah,
Just
it's
when.
not-
Oh,
it's
that's
not
true.
if.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, we're all waiting for that. Hopefully, that will be not a disappointment.
Also, we have like the Empire, Tales of the Empire.
We have
yeah,
more
that's
shows
supposed to be-
coming
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that one already,
Oh.
it's done now. so-
Yeah.
And the other one with Jude Law,
whatever
Oh,
that name
yeah,
is.
right.
Like the Crew?
Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton
Skeleton
Crew.
Crew.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
soon.
So,
God, there's so much stuff.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Good for us. Lots to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you later. I'm your host, Scott McDonald. Thanks for being here in the Lightsaber Lounge. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Lightsaber Lounge. You can follow and message us on Instagram at Lightsaber Lounge. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a new episode. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and may the Force be with you.
Alien life form detected.